again, Baseball Romantics. This is Jason with you for another episode of the RAB podcast. I got my battery mate Bruce with me. Our guy Nico might slip in later, but he is also potentially on the IL today. So we'll see. We're going to talk some Rafael Devers today. We are going to talk some New York Yankees and a couple other subjects with you while we got you. So Bruce, welcome aboard, man. How you doing?
I'm all right, Jason. Just happy to be back from Kansas City, visit the Negro Leagues Museum, which was absolutely fantastic, and a couple of very sad Royals games.
Yeah, that didn't work out great. I know, but I know you still had a good time being at the ballpark. And was that the celebration of the '85 team?
No, it was the Alex Gordon induction into the Royals Hall of Fame, which was awesome to watch and really fun to be at. I will warn anyone going to Kaufman, don't sit in the mezzanine middle levels.
Okay,
It gets very
advice.
Claustrophobic.
Good advice. That's one of the stadiums is near the top of my list to get to soon. So glad you said that.
Yeah,
And
first game we were in the mezzanine level. Second game we were out in right field by the bullpens, and that was fantastic.
Awesome. And the Negro League Museum, I've heard nothing but fantastic things about. So you can tell us firsthand that was a great experience.
If you're in Kansas City for anything, you have to go. It's absolutely wonderful. And if you're lucky, Bob Kendrick might just be standing around and offer to talk to you about the exhibits. And we got that lucky, and listening to him tell the stories as we walked through the museums and give a personal tour. We started off with 6 of us in the first part of the exhibit, and there were 30 by the time we were in the middle of it. Just people just stopping, because he's such a wonderful storyteller. He really is, and he knows so much.
There's nothing better than a great baseball storyteller, right?
Absolutely. That's what we do. We tell stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, moving into the modern day, we had a pretty significant trade go down this past week, Bruce. Rafael Devers traded to the San Francisco Giants. Obviously, there was some acrimony in Boston between Devers and the front office that, let's just be honest, led to this. They would not have been trading him otherwise, I'm sure. Buster Posey steps out, makes a big move, takes on a big contract. And let's bat this around a little bit. Let's get your thoughts overall on, kind of both sides, how they came out of this deal, and just your overall thoughts. Does this make San Francisco, at least in the immediate, are they more of a contender to the Dodgers now, or is this just kind of make them still a wild card team?
I don't think it brings them to Dodgers level, honestly. I think the Dodgers are still kind of in a league of their own when they're healthy. We're going to assume for a minute the Dodgers are going to get healthy at some point. They're going to have Snell back, and they're going to have Glasnow back for his 5 innings and crying that it's raining performances that he puts in. But still, for those 5 innings, he's still one of the best pitchers in the game. So as long as he doesn't cramp up or something silly like that, it's going to be nothing short of a rotation full of potential Cy Young Award winners. And that's really hard to fight against, especially now that Shohei's back on the mound, even if it's in limited capacity. The Dodgers are still the class of the National League, if not Major League Baseball, when they're healthy. But Rafael Devers gives them that big left-handed bat that they haven't had since Barry Bonds was there, who's going to start dropping balls in McCovey Cove anytime now. And he is taking reps at first base, effectively flipping the bird at the Red Sox by doing that and saying, listen, Buster, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I'm just not going to do whatever they ask me to do. I think the big question for the Giants, the only question for the Giants is whether or not he's going to be a good clubhouse presence. We know he's going to go out there. We know he's going to hit. Maybe he'll DH. Maybe he'll play first base. Who knows? He's certainly not going to play third base out there. But he makes them a better team than the San Diego Padres all by himself. And they're already, last I looked, 2 games up on the Padres in the standings, if I remember right. And the Padres, I don't want to say they're scuffling, but they're not necessarily playing up to their potential. And they do have a habit of kind of doing that over time, where they will scuffle for a little while, and then they'll play well and really be competitive, and then they won't for a little while. And so the question is going to be is who's going to be more consistent, the Padres or the Giants? My money's on the Giants, especially now with Devers there, and that pitching staff in San Francisco has been really good. That contract is no big deal in San Francisco. They're going to be happy to pay it when they're in the playoffs, because that's where they're going to be.
Well, that was my next question. The biggest criticism I've seen reading some articles from other executives around the league was the Giants taking on that huge contract, which probably won't age well, but none of these long-term baseball contracts age
He's 28
well.
years old. What's he got? What's he got? He's got 8 years left on that? You know,
Yes, I believe are
he's
nine.
mid 30s by the time it's over. But
Yeah.
what the Giants are going to get are those best 4 years from Rafael Devers. He's going to give them that big bat that, assuming he stays healthy, which I don't know why he wouldn't. He hasn't been a really big injury prone kind of guy. He's going to go out there. He's going to put up, if not MVP like numbers, slightly sub MVP numbers. And that ball, I think his swing plays well in that ballpark. I think we're going to see a lot of power, big power numbers. He's going to be the guy that makes that lineup something that people are actually going to worry about. And it's going to be for at least the next 4 or 5 years. They're going to get their money's worth.
Yeah, like I said, none of these long-term huge contracts age well. So that's not
Yeah.
even, I
Yeah.
mean,
I'm waiting
do
for
we
someone
think
to figure that out and stop giving them out.
yeah,
But
yeah. Do we think the Vlad Guerrero contract's going to age really well by the
no,
end of that term?
no. Well, listen, here's the metric I like to use. Currently, the Blue Jays are at best the third place team in that division with Vladimir Guerrero, and they will not be worse without him.
Yeah.
So why give him the contract? I know why. I mean, I know the answer. The answer is
Yeah,
money, because
we
they're going to
talked about
make the
that. Yeah.
revenue selling jerseys and T-shirts
Yeah.
off of Vlad being there. But on the field, it's not going to make a difference.
Well, we talked
Devers
about it
makes
too.
a
And frankly,
difference.
the Blue Jays have had such a hard time getting free agents to come and sign with them, even when they've had the money, that I think they felt like, hey, this is their chance to at least keep a guy that the fans will flock to and buy
Well, it's
their
funny.
merch.
It's funny you say that, because I said that in the Facebook group at one point. I'm like, free agents don't want to go there. And somebody came back and said, well, what about Matt Chapman? And what about George Springer? What about, and I said, okay, that's absolutely reasonable. But look at what they did when they got to Toronto.
Yeah.
Springer's not what he was in Houston. Chapman was an absolute flop. And there's other examples of free agents going there. Look at Jeff Hoffman. Absolutely terrible. And for, I don't know why. I don't know if it's the culture. I don't know if it's cold. Whatever it is, free agents aren't going there and playing like they did in the team they were on before. And at some point, you have to find the common denominator for what that is. And it's not probably the cold.
What are your thoughts on the return? The Red Sox got here. Kyle Harrison, Jordan Hicks, a couple of prospects that me and you kicked around before we started recording. What are your overall thoughts on Boston?
So like we mentioned before we started recording, my question was, how much did the Red Sox shop this around, and how much were they just wanting to get rid of somebody who was a drag in the clubhouse? We know Devers was a drag in the clubhouse. We've spoken about it on previous episodes that Cora is not handling it well, or at least he's not being effective with the way he's handling the clubhouse mood and culture. And I think that this trade helps for the Red Sox. So I think that's a start. When I look at the haul, so to speak, though, I really wonder who they called. We know they called more than one team, but what were the offers? I'd love to know what some of the other offers on Devers might have been, because I look at Tibbs. I like Tibbs, nice prospect. He's going to come up. He's going to be an everyday player. He's not going to be a superstar. He will likely augment Roman Anthony at some point, for sure, in that outfield. Jose Bello, he's got a lot of upside to him. Bello does. He could be something. He could be nothing. He's one of those guys. He could come on. I think there's a lot of chatter about certain guys, like in Kansas City, Noah Cameron, where there were moments where he was seen as their elite prospect, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. And I think Bello might be that kind of guy, is where he might have moments where people see him as a really great prospect, and then not so much. And the question is going to be, is who's he going to become coming out of the rookie league experience, which is kind of where he is now, which leads us up to Kyle Harrison. I like Kyle Harrison. The fact that he was pitching for the Giants and now he's not pitching for the Red Sox, he's in AAA, is interesting. But I also am not 100% sure he's ready to play in a city like Boston yet. So I don't fault them for pushing him down. I think, like we had said a little earlier, it's probably a roster move more than anything else. But I think a little more seasoning is going to help him develop his pitches a little bit more. Harrison is bringing out, his fastball velocity is around 95, which, is okay. His chase rate thus far has been about 47%. So, it's not bad. It's not great. He has a high whiff rate. and his strikeout rate isn't bad either. And we're looking at a guy who is also only is limiting guys so far to exit velocity on an average at about 92 miles per hour. So he's not giving up a lot of hard hit balls necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which all of that is really, really plus. What he isn't doing super well necessarily is getting clean innings. And I think those are things that he can improve upon, is getting those clean 1, 2, 3 innings more than he's having now. His walk rate isn't bad, his strikeout rate isn't bad, but he is giving up runs, right? So his ERA is 4.5 this year. If you're looking at him right now, he's a back end starter. Because the Red Sox need a back end starter? Not really.
Yeah.
What they need is a guy they can plug in and be a top of the rotation guy to go along with Crochet. And Jordan Hicks isn't that guy either. He has the power. We know he throws hard. We know he can get swing and miss. But you're looking at a guy, because he throws hard, that exit velo off the bat's going to be higher than a guy like Harrison who's throwing 95. Looking at Hicks, who, let's see, this year he's at about 97 average velocity for Hicks, which is great. But what he's struggling with is throwing strikes with his splitter, which used to be an effective pitch for him. He's only thrown it 6% of the time this year. He's relying heavily on his sinker more, which is a 97 mile per hour pitch. But then, so it's funny when you think about the way guys sequence their pitches. If you're going to throw 97 mile per hour sinker, you want to throw something that looks like it, but isn't it in that at bat as well. And he's only 9% on his 4-seam fastball, which is the same speed as his sinker. I would think you'd want to throw that more in tandem, but he seems to be leaning a lot on sweeper. And I'm going to say it here for everybody to hear, because I know we have millions of listeners. It's just a slider, gang. Sweeper's not a pitch. It's just a slider.
Yeah. Just reading it. Yeah.
But what I was getting to with that,
999 listeners. We need one more.
That'll do it, I think. Yeah, I think that'll put us over the guy who agrees with me on that. But we're looking at Hicks, who, a couple of years ago, when he was the batting average against, was 162 and 166. A guy who's getting exit velo at about 110 miles per hour on average, which is high. But remember, he's throwing gas. Well, it's up to 117 this year, the exit velocity. So it is incremented up, and the batting average against is 265 with a slug of 365 against him. Again, I'm not saying a 365 slug is this horrible number, but it is up significantly from 195 in 2021. So those are things that are not ace numbers. They're not top of the rotation numbers.
No.
And that is why his ERA is a little bit elevated as well. So I will ask,
that brings me,
is he worth it? No, I'm just asking the question now. Was this worth it for the Red Sox outside of getting rid of Devers? I don't think it was. I think the Giants win for sure.
Well, and that's the big question. And I'm looking at an article. This is from an article on NBC Sports Bay Area. This is an anonymous AL scout being asked about the trade. He says Buster's in it to win it. He said he was going to get a bat, and he did.
High
Here's
five,
what he
Buster.
said about the Boston. He said Boston did the best they could, but the fact that they are in this position is mind-boggling. I hope they fall hard. A club like that should not be in the business of trading stars on a habitual level. Do they just love drama? Is that fair? Is that fair criticism?
It's absolutely fair. Look at the list of people who they've traded.
Yeah.
They sign big contracts and trade people away. That's what they do. Why isn't Mookie Betts there? Why isn't Xander Bogaerts there? Why isn't Chris Sale there? And those are just a few. If you go through and look, there's 7 or 8 really in the last 5-6 years. I understood at the time why they didn't keep Mookie Betts. They said they had to keep one or the other. But then you didn't go out and make an effort to keep Bogaerts. So it's very confusing what they're doing over there. I wanted to give them the benefit of the doubt earlier in the season. I'm just not sure right now.
Well, you touched on it a couple times, other episodes, how this is a different kind of Red Sox front office. They are not trying to directly outbuy the Yankees like they did in the early part of the 2000s. Different approach, and it doesn't really seem to be working. Now, that said, the Red Sox have gone a little bit of a little bit of a run here. They've gotten back to 500. They've looked a little more like the Red Sox, but then, they swept the Yankees, but then that's when the trade was made. So now you wonder, and they
Yeah,
get
but
shut out, I believe,
look at the
yesterday.
Yankees right now, though, and we'll talk about that in a few
True.
minutes.
Yeah, we'll move on to that.
Who is it more about, the Red Sox or the Yankees? Fire Boone.
Yeah, look, I'm, a lot of people have asked me, and I'm talking about friends, not our millions of listeners, because I haven't really given my take on this trade on the page or on the podcast. I think, like you said, I definitely think that the Giants win this in the short term. I'm not that terribly worried about the contract, like we said earlier, because all the contracts age poorly. I think the Giants are trying to get in the mix here because we do know one thing about baseball that we've discussed many times: get in the tournament and see what happens. Do the Dodgers look like the outright favorite when they're healthy? Absolutely. Does that mean they can't be beat in a 5 or 7 game series? Absolutely not. So go out and get the weapons you can get because the Giants are already exceeding expectations. Nobody expected them to be where they're at now. On the Boston side, I think if it was that big of a clubhouse distraction, then this is also a win for Boston, regardless of the haul and return. And just based on some little comments from other players in that clubhouse, it does feel like this was a distraction and that this might be culturally addition by subtraction, but that's still a hard bat to replace in that lineup. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting to see how those two teams diverge from here on out. But I think they both kind of won in the short term. We'll see how it happens in the long term.
Yeah,
Any final thoughts
I
on
do
that?
hope that they come out of that positive because of the addition by subtraction. And I hope Roman Anthony starts to develop into the hitter they need him to be. He's not yet. But I also think that MLB is starting to see that maybe, just calling prospects up isn't as fruitful as everybody wants it to be all the time. Anthony will be okay. I'm not saying he won't. He'll come around, just like I believe in Jack Caglianone. He's going to start hitting the ball to the places people aren't. I was in Kansas City. I watched every at bat. He had maybe one at bat over 2 games that was bad. That was just a bad at bat. He put together good at bats, and every time he made contact, with the exception of one ground ball, he hammered the ball. He was 5 feet short of his first home run, and he drilled one down the first base line that first baseman was just standing right there. But otherwise, that was a double, and it would have scored 2 runs. But it didn't happen. It's going to happen for these guys, but maybe it's too early. We'll see.
Yeah, some of them it takes time, right? Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll leave the Devers trade there, and of course, it's going to be a topic all season as we see. I think he had a couple hits last night in his debut. By the way, even though they lost to
He did,
Cleveland
I
last night.
think.
Yeah, I know he had a double, and I think he added a single later in the game. So let's talk some New York Yankees. They get a lot of attention. I feel like the Yankees don't get a lot of attention. Let's talk Yankees.
Well, I'll stop you there, Jason. We don't talk about the Yankees very
We
much.
don't. I think we're pretty good at not talking about the Yankees. I absolutely think you're right. So they get swept by the Red Sox after sweeping the Royals. They go to Fenway. They get swept. By the way, 2 of those games were 1-run games. The other one was a 2-0 shutout. So the Red Sox weren't exactly lighting up the scoreboard there, but their pitching was holding up. And if you go back to the game before that, the Yankees won that last game of the World Series 1-0. So in the last 5 games after they got shut out, actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, they've been shut out
29
3 in a row.
consecutive scoreless innings.
Yeah, and the other 2 games that they weren't shut out in, 3 games, they scored 3 runs, 1 run, another shutout. So yeah, the offense has gone to sleep for the Yankees. Is this just one of those middle of the baseball season kind of slumps, or is there something more for Yankee fans to worry about here?
I'm glad you brought that up, Jason. I have some numbers for that.
All right.
So in the last 12 games, we know the Yankees are 3-9. So we're going to throw out the Royals series for a second, because that does make it look a lot better than it is. It's not good, gang. Right. So June of 2023, the Yankees were 11-12 in that month. June of 2024, they were 13-14. So what, you take June now, you throw in the Royals and they're 7-9 or 6-9, something like that. I don't know which date they actually started playing them on. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Again, it makes it look better than it really is. What I like to call this the Boone June swoon. He's only had 1 year that he's been manager, that he's had a winning record in June. And now that was 22-6 in 2022. So that, I mean, that was a really great month. You certainly can't say anything about 22-6.
Yeah.
But what I can talk about is that Aaron Judge is 3 for 24, his last 24 with 15 strikeouts in the last 7 games. Cody Bellinger's 2 for 20. Goldschmidt's hitting 217. And those are just a few guys to pick out because those are guys that were kind of spark plugs before they dropped down. You want to talk a little bit more about it. Jazz Chisholm has been hot and cold, but that is kind of who he is. The problem is that he's cold when everybody else is, and Jazz needs to not be that guy because he's an exciting ball player. He's fun to watch, and when he's hot, it's fun to watch, and the rest of the order tends to follow him when he's on base and running around. My criticism is that Aaron Boone is a manager who manages by the book, and when he's doing that and it's going well, it's because he's allowing the players to do what they do. When Judge hits 4 home runs in a week, that's awesome. And Judge is going to come back. He's just cold right now, but it's not going to last very long. But what he's not really good at is rallying the troops. He's not really good at getting guys to play for him. Everybody wants to tell you that Aaron Boone is this player's manager, that they love him. They might love him, but they don't play for him. They don't go out there and work for him and fight when they're on the field. It's a very docile team, generally speaking. They don't get excited about winning. They don't get excited about losing. There's no passion there. And I feel like that is something that is going to hurt the Yankees down the line when it actually matters, which is exactly what happens to the Yankees in the postseason. Something there has to happen. Giancarlo Stanton coming back, maybe that's helpful because now the Yankees can play Rice at first, maybe platoon a little bit with Goldschmidt. It was something we talked about at one point. What are the Yankees going to do when Stanton comes back? Well, Goldschmidt's going to hit 217 over a 2-week period. Maybe he can sit some.
Yeah.
And let Stanton and Rice do their thing. Now, Rice has come down to earth a little bit too, but he's still hitting the ball a little bit. He's just not the aircraft carrier. He's the other guys. And he can be helpful, but they need Stanton hitting. They need Judge hitting. They need Bellinger getting on base and doing what he does. And right now, that's not happening, and Boone's not helping.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be something to that when it happens so often in June. Guys like Judge, when they go on a streak like this, like you said, they're going to come back. Is it more a thing like, though, are they being pitched differently? Because I feel like when Judge gets his pitch, he's going to hit it. So is he just not like, I've always marveled at how, as not having played baseball at any kind of high level, how these guys who are so good at their craft can be so bad for stretches of time. Like, is it the pitching adjusts and they don't adjust right away? Then you got guys like Tony Gwynn who just hit all the time. Like, what is the difference? Like, why do they go into these kind of slumps?
Well, there's a couple of things you brought up there. So a Tony Gwynn kind of hitter is a guy who just goes up there and hits, and this is his business. And let's be honest, as much as Tony Gwynn was maybe the quintessential hitter of his time, nobody was afraid to throw to Tony Gwynn. They wanted to get him out, but nobody walked Tony Gwynn because they were afraid of him. Aaron Judge, if these guys pitch around Judge, and if they get him to start chasing, which is what he's doing right now, he's chasing. He has swung at more pitches out of the strike zone in the last 2 weeks than he did the entire month before.
Like
he's chasing, he's pressing because he was being very disciplined because he had support in the lineup. There's no support in that lineup right now. And everybody, if you notice too, and I don't have the number in front of me, but if you ran the numbers, his walk rate is up quite a bit over the last month because guys are now pitching around him. And Nico had asked this question 2 or 3 episodes ago, is how much longer are people going to pitch to Judge? Well, they stopped. Yeah. They're not pitching to him. They're pitching around him. But Aaron's going up there and swinging the bat anyway. He's got to take those walks. He's got to stop. And he's got to get out of his head.
Yeah.
He's saying, I'm the captain of this team. I'm the guy who's going to pull us out of this slump. It's not really how it works. Yeah. And Aaron knows that. He needs to get out of that headspace that makes him not pick the right pitches to swing at. he'll get there. He'll come back. He's gone through it before where he's gone a couple of weeks where he's just been bad. He'll come out of it. And what's really fun about it is he still leads the league in like everything. Like it doesn't. The only reason that Cal Raleigh is even in MVP conversation is because Cal's really just that good right now. And with that grand slam yesterday, it doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon for him. But I also think that Judge is going to wake back up. Judge is still going to hit 50 home runs. Will he hit 390? I don't know, but he's going to hit over 300 for sure. And he's going to slug. What I don't know is who Cody Bellinger is. Is he now back to Cody Bellinger from 2 years ago? Or is this just a little bit of a cold streak? The Yankees need Bellinger. They need Goldschmidt too. Like I said, maybe Stanton offsets that. If Stanton back in the lineup, if Stanton continues to hit like he has in the last 2 games, hey, listen, maybe that's what helps to protect Judge. Because do you want to pitch to Judge or Stanton? They're both going to hit home runs off of you.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's so curious to me. And then I think too with Judge, and he probably, I don't know if he feels this yet, but he's 33. For all that Judge has done and probably will do numbers wise, if he never gets a ring as a New York Yankee, is he going to be looked at as one of the great Yankees with no ring? Because to be a Yankee means you win rings, right? I mean, generally. I just wonder if there's a little bit of pressure he puts on himself now, especially because he heard the criticism of the World Series last year, the dropped ball and not hitting. So just a lot of things could be going on in his head, and we both know. What I do know about baseball is how mental it can be. What was that Yogi said? It's 50 or 90% mental, and the rest is physical, or what was it? I forget now.
they said, I think they said 90% mental and 50% physical, or something silly like that.
Something stupid, yeah. But the 90% mental is probably absolutely right. While tying this into that, while the Yankees have been struggling, the mighty Tampa Bay Rays, have cut the lead to 2.5 games. One thing I noticed was interesting here, Bruce, because we've talked about the Blue Jays and we've joked back and forth. I'm still clinging to the back of the Blue Jays train. But if you look at the standings now, the Rays they're actually underperforming their expected win total by 4 games because they got a plus 64.
Isn't that crazy? Because nobody gave them I thought no one was giving them a chance out of the gate. But so how is that expected win total so good? Because they are playing really good baseball right now.
Yeah.
And if the Yankees don't wake up, Rays are going to be in first place next week.
Yeah, and by the way, I posted these on the Facebook page just a while ago. Offensive WAR, pitching, and defensive WAR, and the only team that's in the top 12 in all 3 of those categories is Tampa. Not the Dodgers, not the Yankees, not the Phillies, not the
They're
Mets.
going out there playing good baseball. They're just playing good baseball. Kevin Cash, I will continue to criticize him for not leaving Blake Snell in that World Series game. Yeah, but besides that, he's a really good manager. He knows how to get the most out of his team. He knows how to put guys in situations that sets them up for success instead of setting them up for failure. He's really good at figuring out what those situations are. He is literally and figuratively the antithesis of Aaron Boone out there as a manager. Yeah. And he is very much, the front office absolutely has their place in this conversation, but he is one of the key reasons why this team wins, and they just win. Maybe they're not winning a World Series. I get it. But they're out there and they're competitive and they spend no money. They're not even playing in a real stadium right now.
Right.
And there's nothing, and we've talked about this before and we've joked about it. There's nothing I would love to see more than the ALCS at George Steinbrenner Field.
It'd be great. And I remembered something. I'm looking at it now. They're about to go on that run where they're going to play an inordinate number of road games.
Yeah, well, it's going to get hot down there in Florida right now.
Yeah, and that's about to start really last week in June. If you look at July, they have 2 homestands.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how they respond to that. It'll be really interesting to see how they respond to that, because being on the road's hard.
It is, but they've also been okay on the road. They're 16-12 so far.
Yeah. But one of the key components for them is Nathan Lau has remained healthy. Yes. And productive. He loves the grass.
Yep.
He loves not being on that turf. That turf, I think, is a detriment to him. So whatever the Rays do field wise, I hope that they're recognizing that grass keeps their guys healthier, because it really does.
Yeah. And on the flip side, by the way, the Blue Jays are overperforming their record by 4 games. and they still have a negative run differential. So adding fuel to your fire that the Jays are not who they appear to be. If you had to bet on either one of those two teams, I'm taking the Rays,
Absolutely
obviously.
taking the Rays.
But are we really? I mean, can the Rays get into this and compete with the Yankees? Or coming up, we don't know what's going to happen now that Devers is gone, but the Red Sox are only 5.5 out. Are they still going to be that factor? I guess I'm asking, do you believe in the Rays now more than the Red Sox, given the Devers trade, to stay in the race?
Well, so today I believe in the Rays much more than the Red Sox. I think the Devers trade probably ends up being a net win short term for Boston. And if they get, one good prospect out of that deal who comes up and plays, but they're likely to get two, I think long run it is better for them. Or not better. It's not a complete loss for them. I mean, a bat like Devers is a bat that I don't think you ever win when you trade away. But I think the clubhouse mood, if it changes, maybe the Red Sox perform a little bit more like they're capable of. But again, the bat that we talked about before that was going to help them do that is gone.
Yeah.
So I don't know that they're now a real competitor they're not a competitor for the division for sure. But that third wild card looks a little further away today than it did last week for them. And they weren't playing great before that either. I believe in the Rays. I believe the Rays can make the playoffs, which is something I wouldn't have said a month ago.
Yeah, according to Baseball Reference's very complicated, I don't think it's that complicated, statistical analysis, they have an 89.2% chance of making the postseason right now with a 7.4% to win the World Series, which seems kind of high to me, but hey, go Tampa. And
Well, all I have to say about any of that is it's June.
Oh, yeah. But they got to run.
July 30th is a very important date in baseball every year.
Big time. And just got to give a shout out too to Jonathan Aranda. Guy's already got a 2.7 WAR this year. He's batting 323 with a 907 OPS. So
he's having a very nice season.
Big season. I'm looking at this lineup. I'm like, who are these guys? I know who they are, but when you're looking at it, Danny Jansen, Jonathan Aranda, Brandon Lau, Taylor Walls, Junior Caminero, it's like
I talk very much about having that aircraft carrying the lineup, and they don't have that. But what they do have is a reasonably consistent lineup.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't even tell you their starting rotation. I got to get on my Zach Littell, Ryan Pepio, Taj Bradley, Shane. I mean, that's not a bad group.
Well, Taj
Bradley blow you away, but it's not a bad group.
If the Rays keep doing what they're doing, everyone's going to know who Taj Bradley is.
Yeah, that's an interesting group there. We'll see how it plays out. So, what else is on your mind, Bruce, that you've seen in the last week or so that's got your attention?
Well, so I mentioned Jack Caglianone and the Royals a little bit earlier, and how so the Rays have scored in the last month 157 runs, which is why they're climbing. The Royals have scored 80. So there's your two ends of the spectrum, and I think that is a really big deal for the Royals. Take away last night's game where Salvi hit 2 home runs and was the hero again. But Salvi over the last 10 games, his OPS is over 800. His batting average is 265-ish. I'm not looking at it. This is all from memory, gang. But he is waking up a little bit. When I was there, he got 3 hits while I was there in Kansas City. Maikel Garcia, watch him in Kansas City. He's hitting 330 something. He's leading off for them. He got 6 hits while I was there. He was stranded on all of them except the one where Salvi drove him in the first inning of the first game I was there. But that kid Garcia, he might be a little better than people thinks he is out there in Kansas City.
Yeah.
I don't know what it becomes for them, but I would just remember that name for later. The other piece of the puzzle is the Phillies are playing pretty good baseball right now in the National League. Nick Castellanos drama aside, they're getting good pitching performances. Schwarber's not quite doing the Schwarber June that he's done in the past, where all he does is hit home runs, but he did that earlier.
Yeah.
In the year. But which is fine because what he is doing, I mean, he started off a little cold in June, but he's picking it up a little bit. He's hit a couple of home runs in the last week. And in the absence of Bryce Harper, Otto Kemp has been a godsend for the Phillies, and he's not the guy out of that minor league system I would have picked. Kemp was hot in AAA, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
He wasn't the guy,
Yeah.
but he's doing a nice job for them up there and allowing Bohm to play a little first. They've been switching between first and third. I don't think Thompson knows what he wants to do with him yet.
Yeah.
And when Harper comes back, the question is, what is going to happen? Because Kemp is earning his spot on that team. So that is absolutely something that everybody should be watching, is the Otto Kemp show.
Yeah, when they're healthy, I still think the Phillies are the class of the, the Mets have a 2-game lead right now, but I just think the Phillies end up winning that thing over 162, assuming everybody gets healthy. They need Bryce Harper.
They do. Well, they need Harper
Right.
back if for nothing else than his presence in that lineup.
Absolutely.
Even
Yeah.
if he only hits 260 for the rest of the year, his
Yeah.
presence is enough that they need him back in the lineup. The question is going to be is where is he going to play? Or
Bryce
where's
needs a
Kemp
ring.
going to play? Or whatever.
Bryce needs a ring. I want to see Bryce.
Yeah.
I used to not stand Bryce Harper. Now he's one of my favorite players. And
I went through the same thing. I hated him in
Yeah.
Washington. And when the Phillies
Yeah.
signed him, I was like, you know what? He took less money to go to Philadelphia. I mean, yeah, it's a longer contract. I know that. Because he wanted to be a Philly. And I said, I'll give the guy a chance. And he's won me over absolutely. I've gone to 40, 50 Phillies games in that time span. He loves the town. He embraces everything. He is that team from their roots up.
he's a
And
ball player.
he is a ball player. He plays hard. He plays passionate. And yeah, sometimes he plays stupid, but that's part of that. Castellanos running his mouth with his emotional reaction to being pulled from the game for a good reason.
Yeah.
That's who that team is. The problem with that is passions run high and passions run low. When they run low, they don't do anything.
Yeah.
Take that, compare it to the Rays. Right now, I believe the Rays might have a chance at making a deeper run, all things being equal. Again, July 30th notwithstanding. They have a better chance because Cash is managing that team to be successful. Whereas Thompson, well, I don't have a problem with him as a manager. He doesn't have the capability to take that emotion when it goes south.
Right.
And this is not the Yankees' problem. The Yankees, Boone is just not a leader. The Phillies run so hot and so cold. I don't think anybody could even that out.
Yeah, no, that's a
But
good
that is
point.
what they need.
But that passion, I feel like, is what separated them in those 2 postseason series with the Braves. The Braves are very much a go back to business kind of team, and the Phillies had all this passion. By the way, backtracking, it was just a few weeks ago we were talking on our show about how the AL Central might grab all of or many of the wild cards. And now that whole division, other than the Tigers, is going south really quickly. So it really opens things up for the East and the West because, well, the West has kind of gone a little south too. The Mariners now 4.5 back of the Stros. The Rangers have won 7 out of 10, but I mean the AL Central taking that step back has really kind of opened that wild card race back up.
Well, I just want to point out that when we're in September having that conversation, that I told everybody that was going to happen, that the Twins aren't for real, and I don't know why the Guardians win, but they do. So you can't count them out of anything, but that those are your 2 teams, and the Twins. I don't know. I don't know what to say about them other than they're not that good. They're just not that bad either. They're somewhere in between. And don't count Kansas City out yet. Give them a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Well, because again, if Caglianone does hit into the gaps, if he does hit that first home run that gives him that moment, and all hitters go through this where you can't catch a break, and that's what I see Caglianone doing. If he starts doing that, Witt starts to see better pitches. If Witt starts to see better pitches, Witt can produce better. Caglianone can produce. If Perez evens out a little bit as far as how much he's been slumping, that lineup all of a sudden isn't bad because Pasquantino's hot right now. Garcia's hot right now, but there's nobody else. And that's what they need to get going. And if they do, they're going to win some games. If it goes on for another 3 or 4 weeks, they're going to be out of it anyway, and it's not going to matter.
Well, I was just looking at those teams, and of those 3 teams behind Detroit, the one I would have the most faith in right now is Kansas City. So,
well, the pitching is going to carry them. The pitching them is going to keep them relevant. And so that you look at what they've been losing. They haven't been losing 13-2.
Yeah.
They've been reasonably close games. And it was funny when I was in Kansas City, I'm looking at the Athletics lineup and I'm looking at them going, who are these guys? These are actually good hitters. They are. The Athletics are not a bad team. but
They can hit.
they can hit. Their pitching is not great, and what they did was, they ran into a Royals team who can't hit right now.
Yeah.
But the reality is they're not that terrible of a team. Getting beat by the Athletics isn't this horrible thing, except they went on that big skid where they just
Right.
couldn't win a game. Well, they're out of it now.
Yeah.
And they're just a little bit better than people give them credit for. They're not a competitor, but they're not they're not the Rockies, they're not the Marlins or the White Sox.
Hey, the Rockies, 3 wins in a row, man. Break up the Rockies.
Well, listen, they got to win sometime.
Oh, look out. I was very upset with the Braves dropping that third game of that series to the Rockies, but they are playing a little decent ball. That's no excuse, though. No excuse. All right, Bruce. Anything else you want to finish it off with, or we'll call it a day and see what happens in the next week or so with this Devers situation. Like I said, 2 hits last night in his debut.
Yeah.
We'll see going forward if these two teams go in the same direction or they kind of diverge. And it's going to be really fun to watch. Really interesting.
It's gonna be really fun to watch. I would love to see Devers go on an MVP like tear for the next 2 or 3 months and be reinvigorated as that big bat, excellent player we know he is. And hopefully the change of scenery does that for him.
Hopefully for his sake and the Giants' sake, we'll find out. We'll see. We'll have our guy Nico back hopefully next week. Bruce, continue doing the great work you're doing with the Ring the Bell podcast. We appreciate your work on that. And if you haven't become familiar with that, you're one of our listeners. That is right now. Are you putting that on Spotify, Bruce, or are we going to keep that on the bullpen? What's your plan?
Also, the Ring the Bell podcast is up on Spotify, Apple, and iHeart. It's a journey through Philadelphia baseball history. So if anyone who loves that sort of stuff, think you're going to love it, go find it on your favorite podcast place and you will find it. It's audio only, but that's okay because nobody wants to look at me anyway.
I absolutely enjoyed it. I've listened to that first episode. It was fantastic. So you guys check that out. We appreciate you, and we will see you guys at the ballpark. Bye.